it gives this really visceral like power dynamic where he's clearly, in control of the scene because he's framing it and she's like stuck. She's like literally stuck, See that? So she's stuck. Ideally, you can do it in a way that doesn't feel like he's teabagging her. But basically, that's an option. Hey, want to be reviewed? Just send your animations in the Professor Goo review channel in the Discord. Each stream, I'll be going over one animation, which will be randomly selected from that channel. If you happen to be in stream that day, we'll go over it and maybe even jump into a call. If you want to watch these streams live, go to twitch.tv/DylanGoo. Hello, Goos. Welcome to Professor Goo Reviews. Today's was submitted by Aiden. Aiden has done a storyboard for us, which is really, really cool. As you can see here, there's clearly, two characters talking. They're having a dialogue scene about something that is pretty, seemingly reveals a bit of, threateningness. Is that a word? I don't know. It's a little scary, a little uncomfortable. The kid is clearly, a bit more, I don't know. There's something wrong with him, and the girl knows that. So that's conveyed pretty well through the storyboard, which is great. Now, there's a couple things that we do want to emphasize a bit. And there's three things that I think we can point out. One is emphasizing discomfort. I think there's a couple things that we can do to make this even more uncomfortable, which she's feeling right here. But we want to emphasize discomfort a little bit more. How can we do that? We'll talk about it. Another one is emphasizing juxtaposition. So there's something that's being done here that is good, which is that there is a clear switch in mood, a mood shift that gets immediately switched back. So like you see this playfulness, right? When he's jumping up and down, that's the juxtaposition to this complete seriousness that is very, very scary. So we want to lean into that, and I'm going to talk about how to make that even better. But this is good. This is a good mechanism. And then, of course, we want to talk about avoiding repetition. Now, repetition is good in some cases. In this particular case, I think there's some opportunity for us to just have a bit more variation in the camera work, which can convey the same thing, but with a bit more options, a bit more variety. And it helps make the scene feel more dynamic and give the audience more information to take in. So those things are the things we're going to talk about. So let's begin with emphasizing discomfort. I think discomfort is something that is already being done pretty well. We have, her position compared to him is very good. We have already this diagonal, which is really great. The diagonal of him being above her and her being clearly on the ground does give some good context. Her facial expressions also very, very good. Now, how do we make this even worse, even more uncomfortable? There's a couple things that I think would be interesting. First of all, what is he stepping on here? I think that's something that would be really, really good to emphasize. Now, I have no idea what the story is, so I'm not sure exactly what we have to play around with, but I think I'm assuming that he's jumping on a bed or something like that, right? So if he's jumping on a bed, that's fine. I think if you wanted to emphasize discomfort, you don't necessarily have to show, focus on this character while she's talking. What if we just, if I were to draw this out, what if we just had, the emphasis of the camera actually being on the bed itself, and we actually show, and we can have her in the background a little bit, but this will emphasize discomfort. So we could have her maybe here, right? So this could be something like this, right? And this bed would actually be a lot bigger. Sorry, I drew it so small. This is not a bed. But if you focus on the feet and you focus on the bed specifically, the bed kind of like caving in a little bit for every jump, there's something really visceral about the idea of looking at something that feels unstable and knowing that this kid should not be jumping on this bed, right? So if you were to actually have this, as just like a, let me draw her character a little bit more clearly, right? So she's over here, she's sitting on that bed, right? And that's fine. But like, so she's now tiny, right? And the audience can't help but feel super uncomfortable being really close to this very unstable child who's jumping on this very unstable bed. So now you've increased the discomfort level by at least like 3 or 4 times compared to this one, right? So this one's pretty comfortable. It's like, oh, he's just jumping. It's like, it's kind of fine. We're at a comfortable distance. The focal length is pretty big. And like the girl is like, pretty big in frame so we can understand everything. This feels weird. Like it feels off. And that's what we want, right? So leaning into that discomfort, that would be really, really cool. This, great angle. So this is already emphasizing discomfort. Really, really good. So that's really good. Now, I think with that in mind, all the discomfort parts are pretty good to go. So we're actually going to talk about the juxtaposition. Right here, I think it'd be really, really good if we just cut to something that felt even less threatening, right? Like the idea of this is to cut out of a really tense sequence with something that is like totally the opposite of tension, right? So actually what we want specifically is to have this wide shot would have him sitting right here, or standing right here, I should say, jumping up and down again, like a kid, right? That's an important thing. And then she'll be sitting here. So this would allow us to have interesting juxtaposition. I've totally messed up the framing here, so let me just change this framing because I'm too lazy to like redraw it. We'll just change this to like be like right here, right? So if you had this camera instead, you could have this really, really wide shot with a high focal length that feels extremely non-threatening. You're giving the audience all the information. You're not hiding anything. You're showing them the entire room, giving them everything. That makes them feel safe. And that feels weird. It feels weird to feel safe right after this sequence, right? Because she does feel threatened. She does feel creepy. And then here, we just cut out and then he's just jumping. And that makes us feel even more uncomfortable because we're like, the fact that we can't see anything wrong with something that we know is wrong, it'll really help. That juxtaposition, emphasizing that juxtaposition would be really, really good. So the third point is actually avoiding repetition. So we want to avoid repetition. And by that, I mean, basically, this is a shot. We've already seen this angle before. This is, if you guys remember, the first angle. See that? So this is the first angle. We don't really need to see this exact angle again. We can, if you want to. That's obviously an option. It does work. But the question is, can we make another shot that is a little bit less repetitive, right? Something that gives the audience a bit more information, maybe in some other way. I think we can split this into 2 shots, probably. And it just depends on what you want to do. There's a lot of options, but we could go back to the wide shot if we wanted to for when she gets up. She gets up and she just sort of like walks, you know, off in sort of like that direction, right? You could always do this. This is just a mix it up a little bit if you want to. It might look a little bit like he's teabagging here, but this is a shot that you could do where there's you know, the child is jumping up and down here, and then you can see her, you know, sort of like between the legs, sitting across. So this is an interesting shot because it is sort of so it gives this really visceral like power dynamic where he's clearly, you know, in control of the scene because he's framing it and she's like stuck. She's like literally stuck, you know? See that? So she's stuck. Ideally you can do it in a way that doesn't feel like he's teabagging her, but basically that's an option. But yeah, those are just some fun little exercises. I think that pretty much sums up most of my thoughts. Yeah, really good storyboard overall. Solid fundamentals, really good fundamentals. You're achieving a lot with this. Like, I think I'm definitely feeling the discomfort that you're trying to convey, which is great. I'm just trying to emphasize that a bit more. And the juxtaposition that you have, also really good. And then, yeah, trying to lean into those things. Those are my personal opinions on how to make that better. Overall, though, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a bit.